Hey, how's it going, everybody? Hope everybody's having a great Thursday. I got a super treat for you guys. Been on the channel a couple times already. He is the one half of the voice of Locked On 49ers. Of course, Eric Crocker being the other. The best 49er podcast out there, in my opinion, number one, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others. You can hear Brian Peacock on KMBR from time to time, too. For some reason, I always end up catching him when he's on there, so it must be osmosis. I'm supposed to have you on. So, Brian, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Did you get a new intro? We got some heavy riffs going on there with some 49ers highlights.
Yeah, it was my boy Jesse Naylor hooked me up. He also hooked me up with the overlay too. There's certain things I can do and certain things I cannot do. I changed my background too a little bit, so
Oh yeah, there you go.
no more of the bedroom with the Darth Vader lights.
Let those folks that are good at doing specific things take care of it for you. That's what I've learned. I used to be all DIY, try to do every single thing myself, and anymore it's like, I'll stick to the things that I'm the best at, and I've learned a lot of skills. But I like letting people that are good at things take care of those things.
Yeah, it's one of those things like if you really don't know how to redo your kitchen and you don't know basic carpentry and things like that, don't do it.
Just hire somebody.
Just, save your ducats and pay someone else to do it. People are like, oh, it's really easy. I'm like, no, I already have a job and I don't want to sit here and have to keep rebuying material because I keep cutting, incorrectly or something. So yeah, let the people who are good at stuff do it.
It's not like you're going to redo your kitchen and learn all these skills and then go redo your kitchen again.
No, that's like a 20-year, 25-year deal. Yeah. So with the Niners playing the Dolphins this weekend, I added this after I sent you kind of topics earlier. It came to my head because there's been so much talk about Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan. So to me, it gave me Star Wars vibes, Master versus the Apprentice. Like, who's going to win out? There's been a ton made about it. Who's better? Who's more of a genius? Who is responsible for the 49ers, success run game wise, offensive wise, during and since. So I just want to get your take on the made more out of what it is type thing with the Kyle Shanahan versus and his name is escaping me right now.
Mike McDaniel. Yeah.
Mike McDaniel kind of storyline.
Yeah, the Mikes. It's really fascinating. I know for sure Mike McDaniel's funnier than Kyle Shanahan. Aside from that, I don't know. It's going to be fascinating. It's fun to see. Like the thing that I thought, because it's hard to know exactly how important, what exactly all the assistants are doing. It just becomes like Kyle Shanahan's offense. And he's calling the plays and everything that happens throughout the week and building all the game plans. You never really know. And Mike McDaniel was the run game coordinator for a long time, then becomes offensive coordinator. He gets the job in Miami, brings over Raheem Mostert. It's like, okay, run game coordinator. He's been with Kyle for 15 years, was first hired by Mike Shanahan in the NFL. He's probably going to run the ball 90% of the time, right? That's what you think. And they go trade for Tyreek Hill. They already have Jalen Waddle, like legit 4-3 guys, and a quarterback that you're not sure about, but then they just come out slinging. And so clearly Mike McDaniel is much more comfortable chucking the rock around the yard than Kyle Shanahan is. So they're actually very different. Some very similar stuff. They grew up in the same scheme in the NFL. So there's a lot of motion and a lot of play action and those types of things. And, the catch and run elements are still there in Miami Dolphins offense, but it still feels very different. And the 49ers are doing fine. And actually the 49ers, it's funny, the 49ers are starting to throw it more since they traded for Christian McCaffrey, which they needed to do if they're going to trade for somebody who's a really good receiver out of the backfield. It's one thing they hadn't really done, the 49ers in Kyle Shanahan's offense with Jimmy Garoppolo is throw the ball to the running backs. And some people call Jimmy Garoppolo, because he's not a big-armed, deep ball thrower, a check down guy, and he's never been that. And I kind of think it was missing from the offense. They needed to throw the running backs more. And so now they have to if you're going to go out and spend the resources you did on Christian McCaffrey. So some similarities, some very obvious differences right away between Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan's offenses. And then as far as, just feelings and being close to each other. And, so many players that have played for both teams now. It's going to be really fun to see how this really turns out, and to see if it really fires everybody up to be playing against familiar human beings.
Do you think there's any advantages taken, or do playbooks change over the course of a decade? Like uh, the stuff that the Niners, the stuff that's in there that's
Yeah.
solid every year, like the
I
foundational stuff. Because you're right, one's like the death of 1,000 paper cuts, and the other one will hit you with a 60-yard bomb because they got two guys on the outside that can rip it, and go. Whereas the Niners are more of the traditional West Coast from the 80s, where you throw a 5-yard slant and the guy takes it 60, you know what I mean? Or 80, whatever. So, yeah, there's differences, but like, is there really any advantages?
I would think that Mike McDaniel has, and we talked about this a little bit on Locked On 49ers. I would think that Mike McDaniel has a little bit more advantage because he knows more of the players on the roster. He knows, most of the coaches. He knows the schemes on both offense and defense really well. I'm sure it's the same terminology that he brought over and is using with the Miami Dolphins, or very similar at least. And the new part of the playbook in 2022 for the 49ers was the Trey Lance stuff. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Mike McDaniel knows the entire playbook because they had to go back to the 2021 playbook anyway, where Mike McDaniel was the offensive coordinator, because Jimmy Garoppolo didn't get the playbook all offseason, right? So I don't know how much more they've put in that's different than what literally probably Mike McDaniel can call up on his tablet right now at home and look at. So I think advantage, probably because of familiarity, would go to Mike McDaniel in this case. Although, and it's one of the the things that I've brought up before on the podcast as well, that you can't teach somebody everything, and I'm sure there's different skills and talents, obviously, that Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan have. But are there things that Kyle Shanahan, that even, the person closest to him on the coaching staff didn't quite know what he could do, what he will do, what he's willing to do, what he wants to do now that he has Christian McCaffrey in the offense? It's the I taught you everything you know, but I didn't teach you everything I know kind of thing. So I wonder if there's still some more there that was untaught from the master to the apprentice in this situation.
I think one difference is some coaches will go all out every game, offensive wise, as far as play calling and trying to stretch a defense. And I saw a point on Twitter where it said that Kyle only does it when it's necessary, that he never really shows defenses everything. And I don't know if that's by design. And like you said, like, would he keep it from his assistants? I don't think so. I think guys pretty much know, like you said, it's like the back of their hand. So I mean, yeah, there should be advantage Dolphins, just because defense, however much the offense gets involved in the defensive meetings, as far as like, sets and things that are run out of certain formations. I would assume that it would definitely be advantage Dolphins. But then I guess in a way, can it be the same going the other way too? Because if they run similar offensive sets, wouldn't the defense be keyed on the same things that the Dolphins defenders might be keyed on? Or do you think it seems like a big game of chicken? Like, who's gonna give you something and you think it's one thing, and then they make a completely different play call off of the same formation? So to me, yeah, I think it would be Dolphins, but I think in a way you can kind of see it both ways. Do you kind of feel that way?
Yeah. So Kyle Shanahan's done so well against those coaches he's coached with before, LaFleur and McVay, and he's kind of had their number even a little bit. And so I wonder if it continues in that way here with Mike McDaniel. But Mike McDaniel would also have, the ability to have so much less on tape to look at to try to figure out what he's going to do and what he's going to do against this specific defense, and just knowing the inner workings. I mean, McDaniel knows even so much more about Kyle than McVay and LaFleur have before. So can he use that against him a little bit? And Kyle Shanahan, McDaniel also knows what Kyle Shanahan wants to do against McVay and LaFleur, right? And so he kind of, like, McDaniel might have a really good idea of how Kyle Shanahan might want to attack him in this situation, and know know what that might look like a little bit more than somebody else. So I wonder if that advantage that Kyle Shanahan's had over some other coaches he's coached with would still be the case against Mike McDaniel. But I don't know. It's going to be fascinating. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. I can't wait for it.
The talk of the week, at least in some media sources, has just been how great the Niners defense is. Can it be all time great? They're getting a lot of praise kind of heaped on them, and I'm not so sure. Just because when they played the Chiefs, I know it was a lot of fourth quarter scoring, late third quarter, fourth quarter scoring. I just feel like this team could be gotten in certain ways, especially if the pass rush isn't like 100% like in on every play. So I'm not as confident. Whereas the media, everybody that covers the 49ers talks about how elite this defense is. I think they're going to get tested because the one thing you can't coach and you can't teach is speed. And that's something that the Dolphins have in spades. And the Niners, they're down to their what? I mean, they don't have Emmanuel Mosley. Verrett's again gone. They're down to Diamador Lenore across from Travarius Ward.
Yeah.
And now they're bringing in a guy off the street, cornerback Janoris Jenkins. Like, I don't know. How do you feel? Are you of the mindset that the Niners defense is like this all-time great ranking defense, or can you see some issues and think that the Niners could, not say necessarily get lit up again, but that there might be some, maybe people are overstating what the Niners actually are?
Yeah, bringing in Jackrabbit Jenkins kind of is a situation. He's 30, mid-30s, 34 years old, probably at this point, 35 maybe. And you kind of have the vibe of, last year bringing in Josh Norman. I think there's probably more athleticism still with Jenkins than there was. And he's always been a competitive player. But it also tells you, we're a little bit worried that we're one injury away from being kind of in trouble at corner. So we want to bring in a player like that just to make sure we're cool there. And I don't know if he'll be called up for this game, be ready to play. Is it specific to the Dolphins why they wanted to bring someone like Jenkins in? They can, maybe be sticky in coverage if they have to go a little deeper into the depth chart. But when it comes to this defense and ways they can be gotten, I think it might be a situation where they are so sound and have so many good players at each level of the defense that when they play against a bad offense, they can just strangle them. They can just smother the heck out of one of those offenses. But when they play a team that has a really good quarterback or really good playmakers, a really good offense that can attack a still sound defense and maybe make those throws into tight spaces that need to be made, that can really take advantage of even a sound defense where, like, okay, you played your assignment, but there's still this one place you can go. Like, saw a couple throws from Justin Herbert. It's like, well, okay, Justin Herbert's a different guy. He's a different dude, and he can make that whole shot throw. And it's, in some cases, it doesn't matter if it's DeAndre Carter or Joshua Palmer out there instead of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. He can still get the ball to a place that it's really difficult to get to. Even if you're a good defense and playing sound, there's still going to be some places that you can beat that defense. And so that's what's fascinating to me about the 49ers defense. I think they're really sound. I think they're really good. I don't think they're so dominating, though, that unless Bosa is consistently getting home, that they're going to make a good offense non-functional like they have against some other bad offenses. So that's what I want to see with the Dolphins, is how good is that offense? How much can Tua take advantage? Can he take some of those hole shots? Can they really go beat a sound defense that is very talented? And is that offense that good? So, and I think it's clear that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs were able to do that against the 49ers.
Yeah, and this is one of those things with the Niners, is that they're not a team, at least from my observation and a lot of people's observations, they're not a really good team at like coming back when they're down a pretty decent, chunk of change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not Jimmy Garoppolo or this offensive strength. I feel like the Niners, and I don't mean this disrespectfully because I'm a fan, they're front runners. When they have the lead and the defense can go out there and like choke people out, so to speak, not literally, but like go out there and kind of, kind of assert dominance, that's the best. That's the Niners. So like say if the Niners got up on the Dolphins, a couple touchdowns early and the pass rush is really unlocked, then I could see, a game where, it looks more like the usual 49er victory or game. But they're not, me and my brother are talking about this. He's a Miami Dolphins fan. He says he goes, the way I see it is if we get up on you guys early, I see you guys struggling because that's not Jimmy's strength. And I'm like, I totally 100% agree. I said, but if you guys play the kind of like that keep away game where, you run the ball and you're able to establish line of scrimmage and clock and get some scores off of it, not field goals, actual touchdowns, then he could see, where the game can kind of favor the 49ers. So there's two different games here. There's that explosiveness from Miami that the quick shot plays that can get a big gain or a touchdown. Or you have the methodical 49ers who kind of just bludgeon you to death until you submit. That's kind of my mindset. And the Niners defense I think they're definitely going to be challenged in this game. I think the speed on the outside is stupid fast. I know that the Dolphins have some issues at offensive tackle on both sides, possibly. So, I mean, the Niners struggled to get really any pressure last week against the Saints. So I like to see if they can kind of step it up here and kind of return to form. Because other than that Nick Bosa sack, I don't think they had a sack last week.
Yeah, and that's where, and I think you're right. I don't think it's unfair to say the 49ers are front runners. They want to be able to have a lead and then bully you in that sort of way and operate from there. And I think that's why they want to run the ball a lot. It's why they want to methodically go down the field and obviously, play defense. And they've built their entire defense and really the entire organization on the defensive line. And, you get Eric Armstead back. That would be a huge asset and a huge help on those third downs rushing from the interior with Bosa. And if they are not going to be able to start either one of their offensive tackles, the Dolphins, that could be a long day. And that will allow the 49ers to have as many bodies as they can in coverage, depth with the linebackers and be able to defend Tyreek and make sure you have two high safeties so they can't get over the top on you and then, come downhill and tackle if they do catch the ball short. But still, even with really good linebackers, even with Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw out there, it's still Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So that's still a difficult ask to say, okay, we're going to try to limit these windows on the second level, but they're going to make some catches, and you guys still got to be able to tackle from there. And Tyreek Hill is just a different guy.
Yeah, I think if Eric Armstead returns, it's I think it's really huge. I think that helps. I mean, Nick Bosa mentioned it, whether it was in a press conference this week or the week before. He's like, getting Eric back would help because he doesn't get the sacks, but inside he is definitely something to be reckoned with. And you couple that with Bosa, Ebukam being healthy, and then it allows the rest of the depth chart to kind of fall accordingly. Guys are not playing more reps than they should, and you get that like what they call the NASCAR package, where when everybody's hurt, a lot of the NASCAR guys are playing starting roles, and it doesn't have quite that same effectiveness. So that's how I'm looking at it. One thing too is the Niners. Their physical brand of play, and this kind of has really nothing to do with what we're talking about. Their physical brand of play is great, but it comes at a cost. So sometimes it'd be nice for the offense to kind of keep the defense off the field sometimes so that they're not asked to always be, doing so much yeoman's work every single game to carry this team. It'd be nice to see the Niners have some methodical, time-consuming drives where they actually get some points on the board and, because it seems like
get 7 instead of 3.
Yeah, that's what, a lot of people were like, a victory is a victory. And it's true. It is in the standings, playoff seeding, all that is true. But you have to look at things in the big picture of like, if this is consistently how you're winning, where you're barely escaping, what happens when you go against a team that can put some points up? You have to forward think. Some fans are so caught up in the fact that we beat a team. And I'm always of that not a negative mindset. I'm just more like, I'm always thinking of a big picture. Like, man, we really scored only 13 points against, the Saints have a good defense. That's one thing. But some of these early games that we had early in the season where you're struggling to put up points on teams, other teams are busting up. It's cause for concern. So like, this is probably since the Kansas City game, the one game that's kind of got me worried. And when we've done predictions in the past, me and other people, we kind of picked this as a loss just because The Niners sometimes have matchup issues with teams that can, that have speed or they have quarterbacks that can move around. The Niners seem like they still haven't figured out how to deal with moving quarterbacks. I don't know. That's
And,
the
no,
other.
sorry to interrupt, but
Go ahead.
if the 49ers aren't winning up front and not getting pressure with 4, that could be due. They could still win the game potentially, but that would be trouble. And
Yeah.
they're not going to shut out the Dolphins, but the 49ers aren't built in a way that if the Dolphins go out and score 30 on them, that they'll probably be able to match that, right? And the only time they scored 30 on the year is when they were continually getting the ball back from the Arizona Cardinals and able to put up a whole bunch of points. But it's going to be key on third downs. Keep the ball away from the Dolphins offense. I think that will be absolutely huge, and converting in the red zone. I mean, third down, red zone. It's so important, and it's always important, but it's really maybe more important this week.
What is your take on the fact that the Niners have these red zone issues with so many guys that they can get the ball to? Is it overcomplication with Kyle Shanahan? Is it Jimmy's inabilities? Like what? Because okay, so the play that everybody saw, which looked like a one read play, was when he took the snap, threw it right to Jennings towards the goal line, and of course CMC. Everybody says he's wide open on the backside of the play. Like, I almost don't blame Jimmy for that because it looked like kind of like a predetermined call by Kyle Shanahan that if you asked Kyle, he probably would have told you that Jimmy had the right look on that play. Like when you saw that, did you think more Jimmy missing a play, or did you think that was more of a play call thing?
Yeah, for sure. When I saw that, it was like, well, his reads started on the right side of the field, and he saw an open player and he threw it. And there's a lot of times where Jimmy Garoppolo gets unnecessarily criticized for those types of things where, you roll it back 3 or 4 times and you see, hey, well, this guy was open over here and you never looked at him. And he's like, well, if my progressions start over here and number 1 is open, I'm throwing it because I don't know that number 3 is going to be open when I get back over there, and maybe if he got, 1, 2, 3 and got back across the field, but you don't have that much time. And especially in the red zone, you don't have a lot of time. So he looks over on the right, he sees that he's got 3 receivers and kind of 2 defenders plus a safety, and it looks like good numbers for him. So of course he's going to start his read on that side of the field. And the first guy breaks pretty open, and they didn't get the touchdown out of it, but he didn't know how the coverage was going to rotate, and he didn't know that Christian McCaffrey was just going to be left alone and completely uncovered on the other side of the field because it looked like they had better numbers on the right side. And you make your first read. If your first read's open, you let go of the football. You got to get the ball out in under 2.5 seconds in the NFL, right? And that's Jimmy Garoppolo's strength. So he's not just going to wait and see and look through 5 different receivers and be like, oh yeah, well, that didn't work, so let me go back to number 1 again, because that obviously the timing's over. So once you start and one's open, you let go of the ball, you let go of the football. So you can't blame Jimmy for that one.
What do you make of his toughness in that last game? He took some massive shots.
Well, I first of all got a little bit worried with both Jimmy Garoppolo and Christian McCaffrey being kind of banged up at the end of the game. It's like, okay, well, that's the thing that can't happen, right? For the 49ers run this year is to lose their quarterback, and Christian McCaffrey, you spend all of this to go get him, and running backs are going to get hurt. But if you don't have that extra bit of juice in your offense that he brings, and really that's the one thing that I saw an uptick in since Christian McCaffrey has arrived, which has probably been like him just purely running the football. It was not enough at all for the 49ers to make that move and go get Christian McCaffrey. I mean, we've seen how, Elijah Mitchell's outproducing him just as a pure running back. Not to say that he's a better running back than Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's a good running back, but it's just not valuable enough just for pure running back ability to have gone out and paid what you're going to pay and what you're going to have to pay in the future dollars worth for Christian McCaffrey. The thing that I've seen with Christian McCaffrey is it has opened some things up for some other players. And you're going to see, like, Brandon Ayuk's had some really nice games, right? But I mean, get in line. Like, you think they're going to double cover Brandon Ayuk in this offense with Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle, right? So Brandon Ayuk's going to be singled up all day. And so that really helps everybody else on the field to have that extra playmaker on the field in Christian McCaffrey. And teams, it seems like, have really keyed on Christian McCaffrey since he came over, even in some cases more, it seems like, than Deebo Samuel. Because remember last year and earlier on this year, wherever Deebo Samuel goes, he's got attention going his way, and now Christian McCaffrey taking some of that attention away. But the places I've seen it help the most so far for the 49ers is third downs and red zone. And the 49ers got a lot better in that regard since they traded for Christian McCaffrey. And so that's got to continue. I think they went from 41 to maybe 55% on third downs when Christian McCaffrey, since Christian McCaffrey showed up. That was before last week's game. So I don't know if that came down a little bit at all. The red zone, obviously weren't as good in the red zone either, but just having that extra player to throw to out of the backfield. And it seems like it's helped Jimmy Garoppolo not force some throws. And, Jimmy Garoppolo, but even Jimmy Garoppolo was already kind of playing free and looser. It seemed like even before Christian McCaffrey showed up. Going back to the Falcons game, I know that game didn't turn out great for the 49ers. Drop balls, but I thought Jimmy Garoppolo played great in that game. So, yeah, it's a fun offense, and when they're playing like they were in Mexico City, it's an amazing offense, right?
Incredible.
So well orchestrated. You're throwing for points, and then you're bullying in the second half and run the ball and doing whatever you need to do. But you don't get to play the Cardinals defense, unfortunately, every week. But I think there's some of those elements that they can continue to bring. And I like seeing the 49ers throw the ball more early. And I'm not even talking about chucking it down the field or anything crazy,
Right.
but just get the ball out of your hands into your playmakers' hands. Get the ball out to Christian McCaffrey. Get the ball out short to Deebo Samuel. Let your playmakers make plays, throw for points, and then you can get your 30, 40 carries, Kyle Shanahan, in the second half.
There's a little bit of a convoluted question I wanted to ask you involving Deebo, CMC, and trading Jeff Wilson Jr. But before I do that, I want to ask you, I'm going to switch it back to defense. I asked this on a stream earlier this week, and then I'll ask you, and then I'll kind of give, the whole, if you had to have a defensive MVP. And then I just randomly saw today or last night that Nick Bosa was voted the player of the month. And I think when I had my players the other day, I might have had Talanoa Hufanga and Nick Bosa kind of as my two people. I mean, the Niners have a lot of defensive MVPs that you can kind of pick for. But if you had to give, I can't even really say first half because we're kind of past the first half, but a defensive MVP so far on that defense, because there's a lot of them. Is this they say that like this defense, to have an elite defense, you have to have like elite players at every level, kind of like that old Bucks defense where they had like Sapp, the linebackers, and then you had John Lynch back there and all those other guys. Who's your defensive MVP this year?
I wouldn't fight anybody who said it should be Fred Warner. He's so important to the defense. Love the way he plays. Love how dependable he is, flying around the field, getting depth in coverage, chasing wide receivers down in coverage at times, range, whether it's chasing down running backs, quarterbacks, receivers, whatever it is. He's such an important player and so fun to watch. Talanoa Hufanga's had a really good year, some missed tackles occasionally.
Yeah.
There's been a few times when he couldn't quite get there in the passing game. And so kind of like I mentioned with Justin Herbert making throws, and it's like, okay, when you got the whole shot and you see that 4.6 speed, it's like that's the one thing. It's like, okay, he's not amazing there, but he's been so much better in coverage than I thought he was going to be. Hufanga making big plays, like just the instinctive plays he makes, like to knock the ball out against the Saints and Alvin Kamara.
That was insane.
Yeah, it's just like he's in the right place so many times, making plays for other guys, tipping up balls that other guys have intercepted. He's just an animal out there. So he's super fun to watch as well. Been really important, but I mean, it all starts with Bosa. Bosa is so important, and he's obviously got a lot of sacks. He's got a lot of pressures, those types of things, but he is so good against the run too. And it kind of goes, it's sort of like the George Kittle blocking thing too.
Yep.
People look at just the pure receiving numbers for George Kittle. It's like, well, yeah, he's also the best blocking tight end in the league. Like that matters and that counts. And it's the same for Nick Bosa. He's so good against the run, setting the edge, doing all of those things. About the only bad game he's had was, not surprisingly, the Chiefs game, and the Chiefs went crazy on the 49ers.
The whole defense in general had a bad
and they were really banged up at that point of the season too. So I wouldn't expect them to play even that bad if they played against the Chiefs again, right? And ran that one back now. But he's just so important, and to have that kind of a difference maker off the edge is just such an impactful position. So I would go Bosa.
You know who's really important in this defense? And I was just mentioning it again to my brother because he's a Dolphins fan. He brings an edge. He plays a little bit on the, right on that edge of, going a little too crazy. But man, Greenlaw, when he's in that lineup, he just brings a physical nature and almost a little bit of a, not dirty player, but he's on that line, you know what I mean? And in a way, the Niners, have always been thought of, at least back in the old days, as they were a finesse team. Or, I like the fact that, we have a couple of mentally unstable guys on this defense that might, go play a little bit past the whistle.
Oh,
I
dude.
know what's that?
Yeah, and like the 49ers have always had that because of their offense and
Right.
and Jerry Rice and how well orchestrated it is and how how beautiful it is, like a symphony out there. And it's like, oh, they're not a tough team, but it's like, are you crazy, dude? Ronnie Lott and Charles Haley, we're talking about living on the edge. He was definitely over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the other defenses in the Harbaugh era the 49ers have had. The 49ers have always had plenty of physicality on their team, and they're
Tim
definitely
McKyer was a little bit of a
like that's you couldn't even play back in the day.
Romanowski.
Oh, dude, yeah, early
Yeah.
Romanowski, yeah, that set the tone for his career. He's like, man, I got to step my game up and just get roided up and be a freak of nature.
Start spitting on people. Yeah, do that. Oh my lord.
Yeah, they definitely have an edge, and Drake Greenlaw plays right there. A couple dub penalties where he does go over the edge a little bit late, and some other things, and playing a little out of control at times. But yeah, he flies around the field and it's fun. It just the energy with all those guys, with how Bosa's motor is nonstop, and Warner and Greenlaw flying around, and Hufanga flying around, and they're not afraid of anybody, and it's why they're such good bullies when they get the lead.
I think that's one of the reasons they also get hurt a lot too, offensively and defensively, is that the physicality is so over the top sometimes that guys just their bodies become, unfortunately, your body's things break and snap and strain. There's times where the Niners finish off a play where like 3 or 4 of them come diving in on top. And I'm just like, why? No, his legs are not going to withstand all of you on top of him. But what are you going to do? That's just the style that they play. But I love Dre Greenlaw. I got pissed at him at times in the past because he can play a little bit of a loose cannon role on the team. But at the same time, they're a different defense when he's not on the field. I think he sets the tone. I think there's multiple players that set the tone, but he definitely sets the tone as far as, physicality, maybe playing a little bit close to the whistle, to be a little bit of where you intimidate people. I think that intimidation in sports is something that's overlooked sometimes, or a player just, he makes a business decision. Like, look at the Cardinals defensive players when Kittle got that last touchdown in Mexico City. Dudes are just like, you know what, man? Nah, I'm good. I'm just going to let him olay. I'm going to olay him out of the way. So I'm big on physicality. I like it. I like being a team that when you talk to other fans, they're like, yeah, I don't want to play your team. Someone's going to get hurt. You guys are freaking crazy. It's like, I love that. I love that kind of mantra and reputation. So
yeah, we saw it in the Cardinals game, as you mentioned. They quit. They were done.
Yeah, they definitely quit.
The Saints game too. Like, I don't think they even wanted to score that much at the end of the game. Kamara was done. Kamara was like, this is not a fun football game. I don't want to be out here anymore.
Right. But it's true though. I mean, like, hell, when I watch football and it's played at that, I mean, I'm also in my 40s, so like I'm thinking with a 40-year-old body, I'm like, oh Lord, I could never play sports because some of the hits that these guys take, those are like night hits, and then you see them get up right after it. And it's like, how? Like, no way, man. Yeah, I just thought that, I thought Bosa was kind of, the defensive MVP, and then the fact that he got, player of the month just kind of cements it. But like you said, there's so many players. So I'm good. I'm like, I don't care who you pick, as long as we still got them all. So that's all that matters. Do you think the Niners, before I go back to the offense, do you think the Niners are going to move on from Azeez Al-Shaair this offseason because they have somebody in-house? I was thinking of like McCrary Ball or somebody else that might step in. I feel like they can't keep the 3 of them forever. I wish they could. Do you see that as a possibility? Because now they re-signed Greenlaw, so he's staying. And of course, they re-signed Fred. Is Azeez the odd man out, unfortunately?
I mean, yeah, you just can't keep spending that much money at the linebacker position, especially how often teams are in sub packages, so, one of those guys is not going to be on the field. So I think clearly they realized, well, we're only be able to sign one of these guys. They love Dre Greenlaw, and he's a really good dude, and they drafted him, they developed him. So they decided to pay Dre Greenlaw, and that probably means Al-Shaair is not going to be able to be re-signed as a free agent, because he should be able to get starters money somewhere else. And the 49ers are already paying a lot of money at positions that you don't really tend to spend a lot of money at, in tight end and running back now with Christian McCaffrey. He's going to be making $12 million a year. Even
fullback
structure, right? Fullback, exactly. So you've got to have some savings somewhere. You definitely can't be paying 3 linebackers.
Yeah, the Niners have a lot of picks in this next draft, a lot of mid rounders. So, like David McNew was saying, they can find a beast linebacker in the 5th round. I wouldn't completely be against that. I mean, the 3rd round too.
I wouldn't be shocked at all if somewhere as soon as they're going to be picking probably a little after pick 100. 101, 102, 103, 105.
I feel like they do better once they're out of like that 1st or 2nd round window, where it really comes down to less on like, oh, this player is like, a top 100 guy or top whatever, and it goes more on your scouts. I think this is when as much as I love John Lynch,
Adam Peters,
yes, to me is the unsung hero of this organization. And I really hope and pray literally that if something has to happen where there's any movement in the front office, say John Lynch wants to go into TV, you cannot let Peters go. I think he's as important for the roster construction that you currently see, especially on defense. I mean, look at this team, man. Like, most of our star players are not like 1st round guys. There are a lot of 3rd to 5th. I mean, Elijah Mitchell, I love him to death. I mean, he's made of glass, but I mean, I think he was a 6th round running back. So,
yeah, he was the 6th rounder. He beat out the 3rd round running back.
That's insane.
Start his rookie year, and the 3rd round running back's not even on the roster anymore.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
It's a meritocracy, man. That's just, it doesn't matter where you're drafted. If you can play, you're going to start.
Yeah, it's no doubt the scouting staff has done an awesome job in that day 3 range. And even with those late 3rd round picks, they've kind of like gone really traitsy and kind of missed on a lot of those players too. Like 4th round, 5th round is when they really started to hit, just drafting guys that are wired right, like George Kittle and Talanoa Hufanga. And man, Spencer Burford's been, as you could never expect that you're going to start a 4th round offensive lineman, and like they have with Spencer Burford. He's done amazing. So
I think he's only going to get better too.
He might be the right tackle of the future.
A lot of people were talking about, why are the Niners, having guys play in the same game, like where a guy comes in for a bit and then another guy, comes in. They did that in like the late 80s, early 90s when they used to have Steve Wallace and Bubba Paris rotate. They had somebody on the offensive line they used to do that with too. I don't know if coaches feel like, listen, I actually legitimately have, said it was it a 53? Maybe I have a 54th guy on this roster who can play. So instead of just starting one guy the whole game, I want to give reps to both. I don't know if that's
sense. I don't know why they don't do it with rookies more often. It makes sense to go play a series or two, then go look at the tablet. And then watch the veteran play for a second. Okay, what happened?
I think so much you can do looking at a tablet. I think you have to play. That's the sad thing about Trey Lance is everyone's like, oh, he's so smart, he's so this, he's so that. But yeah, but he's got to get that experience on field. He's got to suck in a game where he just plays like absolute trash to learn from it. And you're right. Kyle is so. I mean, I don't blame him too. He's got a win now roster. He's all about who he trusts. And as much as all us fans are clamming for Jordan Mason to play or TDP to play, you got Christian McCaffrey and when he was healthy, Elijah Mitchell. Those guys aren't sniffing the field, man.
Oh, dude. And by the way, everyone's talking about Jordan Mason this week. Jordan Mason's going to get leapfrogged really quick by Ty Davis Price and probably
Tevin Coleman. Yeah, I was like, I bet you Tevin Coleman's getting called up off the practice squad in this game.
I would bet every dollar in my bank account right now that Tevin Coleman gets more snaps than Jordan Mason in the next game.
Yeah, it's just Kyle is. But do you blame him though? I mean, like,
well, and there's something to it with Mason, because the reason Mason's active and not Ty Davis Price because he's played special teams. Davis
I heard that with you on. I think it was your podcast or maybe on KNBR. I heard you say that to somebody. Yeah,
that was one of the things I noticed why I thought Jordan Mason would make the roster, because he was playing special teams in preseason, and then he did that in college too, and he's pretty good at it. And he's a good running back, like he's a good runner. But I believe it was I don't think it was Anthony Lynn that was asked about it. One of the offensive assistants was asked about specifically Jordan Mason. Say, well, he looked good camp preseason, 1 carry for 7 yards. This is before a couple weeks ago when he'd only had 1 carry on the season in that first game, I think. And they're like, well, why is he not getting the ball more? And basically they're like, hey, there's a lot more to it than just being a good runner and, pass protection, all these other things. And then in Mexico City, did you see end of the game, garbage time, Brock Purdy's in the game, turns the hand off, running back goes the other way, right? Miscommunication. Is there something, playbook wise that maybe Mason's not picking up quickly? Maybe that was on Purdy. I'm not sure, whose fault that was, but when you turn to hand the ball off and the running back's not there, and then Purdy just kind of tucks it and runs,
Yep.
somebody screwed up there.
That's exactly what I thought. There's a reason why you're not starting. Like, yeah. I wonder what it is.
Right. And so now that Elijah Mitchell's gone, there's obviously you can activate either Coleman or Ty Davis Price. And I'm whoever's active is going to be ahead of Jordan Mason, most likely, if we learn from what we saw earlier on in the season. But maybe, they're rookies, they develop. We saw what happened with Aaron Banks all of a sudden in year 2 is amazing, right? And so, you can develop. Maybe there's some things that Jordan Mason has shown and figured out. Now he's run the ball a few times. He's gotten more trust there. So maybe he will be the number 2 to Christian McCaffrey. But I'd be surprised if he's more than just maybe a short yardage or end of game, in a blowout scenario player as far as the offense is concerned for Jordan Mason, just based on, because we've seen that movie already before this year.
Back to the offense, or actually we're kind of on the offense already. I see, like, I feared it that it was going to happen as far as Elijah Mitchell. And we already know the injury issues with Christian McCaffrey. And then, of course, we traded away Jeff Wilson. This has all kind of come to a head, this whole situation. And there's a lot of people who are in their feelings thinking that Jeff Wilson Jr., we traded him. Why did we trade him? And then, you find out that he actually has to be traded because of where his place was on the depth chart. And then, of course, everything that has happened with Elijah Mitchell and now, possibly with Christian McCaffrey. What is your whole take on this? Like, it happened. Unfortunately, for some of us, where we've seen this before, and it pretty much has played out exactly how we kind of thought it was going to play out. Now, Christian McCaffrey doesn't have like a season-ending injury right now, but like, what's your take that everything that we kind of worried has actually come to pass?
Yeah, and as of Thursday, Christian McCaffrey's back on the practice field. I get the feeling he's going to play. They were monitoring him all week and probably did. He definitely doesn't need to take any extra, reps in practice or anything.
It's like the Trent Williams thing. The guy's going to ball out on Sunday.
Yeah, keep him as healthy as possible, right?
Right.
And so I think it was a win-win with the Jeff Wilson trade because it gave him a clear path to playing more, and he got banged up too in the last game, so he's not 100% right now either. It's just that's what playing running back is, and
especially in this offense.
I don't think the Niners are worse at drafting running backs as far as drafting guys that get hurt. Running backs just get hurt. And the 49ers play a physical brand of ball. They run the ball a lot. They want their guys to get downhill, and you're going to have some high impact collisions. And
yeah.
Especially if you're a speedy back that's maybe not the biggest guy, which is why I don't want to see Christian McCaffrey, who's not naturally the biggest guy. He's done a great job of building his body up and being strong, but he's not a naturally huge back. Keep the guy healthy. Don't, no sense in wearing him out, running him into the ground with useless carries when he's so good out of the backfield as a receiver. That's where he should be shining for the 49ers offense.
You think Debo gets more of a hit and run game? Maybe we start seeing a little bit more into the Debo that we saw last year. Now I know he did come in, they said, a little heavy this year, right? And he was, he's had some injuries. I don't know if that's a real story, but there was talk that he came in heavy, and then he's had issues with his hamstrings in the past. He's had the quad, I guess, right now, and he's had some other stuff. Like, as you see him being healthy enough to kind of start to contribute of the old Debo, and not to the point like they did it last year. It was like Debo or bust, but start to get him into that running game rotation.
Yeah, I mean, and there's been diminishing returns on the wide back stuff too. So I think you give him a couple snaps, show some things, try to get him on plays that get him outside more so than between the tackles. It's kind of a similar idea to Christian McCaffrey. There's no reason to. First of all, those plays haven't worked as well for Deebo Samuel.
They haven't. It's so strange this year. Teams are just on it.
He's magical though, getting to the edge when he gives him get those outside runs. So Give him a few of those, show some looks, show some motions, show some, maybe a reverse or something like that. But you don't have to run him into the ground. You don't need to give him too much stuff, but an extra carry or two, maybe now that Elijah Mitchell's out, for sure. I could see that happening, and just give him the ball as much as possible, because his target percentage has gone way down since the 49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey. And that's why it's like they need to throw more, because they still need to get the ball as much to Debo, but now they have these extra, throws that need to go to Christian McCaffrey, and they still have to throw the ball to Brandon Ayuk, and they definitely still have to throw the ball to George Kittle. So that's a lot of throwing that you need to do if you want to make this offense as good as it can be. And we saw what that looked like in Mexico City, and they threw the ball as much as they've thrown it all season.
Yeah, you have to have defense defending the whole field, instead of like knowing, oh, he's only going to throw to like 2 guys all the time, and they're only going to run 1 guy all the time. Like sometimes they can be that way. Kyle Shanahan, very much, he's been asked in press conferences sometimes, like, with carries and why he doesn't distribute them. And he's of the mindset of, if it's working, you keep going to it. I mean, why throw in the divisional or NFC championship game if you're getting, these massive run holes in plays against a team that has a really great quarterback, and you're scoring off of it. So you understand, but at the same time, you would love to see other guys become involved in the offense, just so you have a well-balanced kind of machine that, hell, if McCaffrey's, getting taken out of the game, I mean, he's still got Debo and Ayuk. Hell, he even got Juwan Jennings, who I know he's slower than molasses, but he gets the ball in big games at big times. And I keep forgetting about him. And then every time he does it, I'm like, that's my dude right there. And then I forget about him again.
It's the Kendrick Bourne thing. It was like the Trent Taylor thing too. It's like, oh yeah, 3rd and Juwan. On 3rd down, it's like, oh yeah, Juwan Jennings can play a little bit too. He's got enough quickness, even though he's not fast at all. He's got enough quicks to
get a 6'3", big body, big hands. Yeah.
Best rebounder on the team, I'm sure, when they're playing pickup hoops. I don't know if they have a basketball. I'm sure they got some kind of hoop at the facility somewhere. I'm sure there's a lot of multi-sport athletes out there. But
absolutely,
I bet Jennings is the best rebounder of the group.
I bet you Trent Williams can hoop. I don't know. I just have this feeling.
Eric Armstead at 6'7" is probably pretty good too.
Yeah, he's pretty. That's a pretty large human being. Speaking of running backs, what did you make of the drama, non-drama, this whole Raheem Mostert taken out of context? It's probably a non-story. I didn't pay too much attention to it because I really don't care, to be honest with you. I just want the game to happen. But the Mostert, talking, I guess saying that, maybe he was rushed back and he had to do what was good for his body. And then, and then kind of that little piece at the end where, he's quoted as saying, he actually has a quarterback that can sling it. And a lot of people thought that was a dig at Jimmy. I kind of am on the fence with that one. I kind of felt like it was, but at the same time, like, he might not have really meant that. And it just, because we're so sensitive with the Jimmy Garoppolo stuff, that maybe we read too much into it. What do you take of that whole situation?
Yeah, because the sentence when he's talking about his quarterback, he's not even talking about the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo. He's like, what he's saying is, you guys think that Tua can't throw, but he can actually sling it. That's what he was saying. It had nothing to do with Jimmy. Like, Raheem Mostert's probably one of the best dudes that has been on the 49ers in the last decade. I love Raheem Mostert. So this is a complete non-story to me. Like, he's the last dude that's going to be, throwing shade at guys. And as far as the stuff about, it happens all the time with teams. Teams want you to put your body on the line for them. And sometimes players have to save themselves a little bit. If he and his doctors think one way is the way to do it, and it's best for him and his career and the rest of his stinking life, which he's going to have to live, right, when he's retired from the league, then he should get the surgery that he needs to, especially if he's going to be a free agent upcoming. We saw Jimmy Garoppolo do the same thing, and it actually hurt Jimmy Garoppolo monetarily this year, but then it ended up being the best thing for everybody involved in some magical, whimsical turn of events that Jimmy Garoppolo's back and in a great situation on a good team and playing his best ball for the 49ers now. But he, the Niners wanted him to rehab and not get the surgery, and he went and got the surgery because he thought it was the right thing. And we're seeing him, I'm sure his shoulder feels a heck of a lot better right now. He's throwing the ball a lot better right now than if he would have just rehabbed that injury and it didn't heal all the way.
It's weird. Nobody wanted him. We didn't want him. We end up re-signing him. Then our star young future quarterback gets hurt. And now we're so glad we have him, because if we didn't have him, we'd have Brock Purdy starting or
Sudfeld probably.
It is insane. And listen, I'm not a Jimmy dude. I'll never get super excited with him because I know you have to be realistic. Like some people are like, well, maybe he's going to turn over a new leaf. And no, Jimmy's Jimmy. He just is. And can they win a Super Bowl with him at quarterback? If certain circumstances go a certain way and they could stay healthy around him, yes, I think they could. It's not likely because if you're going against an AFC team of the Super Bowl, say like the Chiefs, they have like one of the greatest quarterbacks we've seen probably in the last 20 years. So, but at the same time, I mean, he is who we have, and we have to support it because who's the next best option? It's not like we could just go sign a free agent right now and bring him in and say like, all right, you're circumventing Jimmy, you're going to start. Like, so it's really strange. A lot of Niners fans like me are like super like bipolar and confused about the whole situation. So
the Jimmy thing is amazing. Like the perfect example, the last game, Croc and I are going live on Locked On 49ers post game. Back-to-back comments in the chat are, how come you guys aren't giving Jimmy Garoppolo enough love? How come you guys aren't crushing Jimmy Garoppolo for nearly throwing the game away? Like back-to-back comments. Everyone watched the same game, and it's just amazing seeing that's a great term for it, the bipolar nature of 49ers fans and Jimmy Garoppolo. But I do think that it's possible, and it's crazy. So him getting the surgery is the reason he's on the team now. And he's also more healthy than he would have been.
Yeah.
He didn't get the surgery. So he's the best version of Jimmy Garoppolo physically because he got himself surgically repaired and got himself healthy. Now he's on the Niners. And I wonder, the one thing I will say that could be real about Jimmy Garoppolo being the best version of Jimmy Garoppolo yet as a 49er is that because he's throwing about half as many turnover worthy throws, and he's still thrown some. And we saw in the last game, he's gotten away with some things. But every quarter, I mean, Josh Allen's making funny decisions and throwing interceptions too. Like that's one thing. Like I would urge 49ers fans to watch other games and realize that other quarterbacks also throw interceptions. Like Jimmy Garoppolo is not the only guy that does that, right? But he doesn't make the wow throws. He doesn't make the highlight throws as much, but he throws some darts and some really tight window stuff. And when he's not forcing some of those things early in the play, I think that's one of the benefits too of Christian McCaffrey. And if it's worth trading for Christian McCaffrey alone, if just having him on the roster has changed the mindset of Jimmy and probably Kyle too about incorporating the running back into the passing game more. Jimmy knowing that I don't have to force this one thing that's supposed to be there on this play, but it's actually not there now. And that window is too tight, and that robber is coming underneath, that safety's coming under, and teams are doing it more and more, and they're just diving in front of those dig routes that the 49ers run a million of, right? If there's just that one thing now that he knows, okay, I'm comfortable not forcing that because I know I have this outlet that they didn't really incorporate in the offense before throwing to their running backs and feel good about that. And it's like, we got that built in now. And so I'm going to eat that, and I'm not going to throw that. And if I don't see something else open up, I know I can go there. Or he's been making more second reaction plays. Jimmy's gotten out on the move a little bit. And we just saw this week with Budda Baker trying to jump in front of Budda Baker trying to jump in front of a dig route from George Kittle. And Jimmy doesn't throw it, steps up, Kittle sees it, breaks off the route, touchdown pass. Awesome. I mean, those are the plays. Like, yes.
Kind of like that 2017.
Yeah.
Jimmy kind of popping his head. Yeah.
So, and he's and also I would force Jimmy and Kyle. And I mean, it's hard to separate the two sometimes. Is it because of Kyle? Is it because of Jimmy? Clearly, Jimmy turns down some big throws sometimes. But I would, force him. Like it was too middle of the field centric. The passing game. Force him to throw checkdowns to the running back. Force him to throw to the running back. Force him to try some deep throws. If you get a one-on-one, I don't care if it's incomplete. You can get a pass interference. A lot of good things can happen. You don't want him out here throwing picks, but if you get a one-on-one, throw the ball, throw it to his back, throw it to the sideline. If it goes out of bounds, it's incomplete. It's okay, but you've
throw it up to Juwan Jennings for crying out loud. Jeez Louise. That's the one thing about this team or this offense that is frustrating is you say that, and then you see them sometimes at the goal line, and they have these guys like Juwan Jennings is a matchup nightmare because of his size. Kittle. He's not the biggest tight end. He's 6'4". And just sometimes I feel like I wish they would be a little bit more of like not necessarily a jump ball team, but just, they have these guys that maybe can win some mashups down near the goal line.
It's not Kyle Shanahan's style of player, though. They haven't really targeted guys that are good at that. Even Brandon Ayuk, Brandon Ayuk's the most like receiver on the team, where you're like, okay,
exactly.
If that is a weird term, I've never used that before.
That's a new word. It's okay.
Yeah, but like Debo's a unique guy. He's not your standard receiver downfield, go make plays on the ball. Jawan Jennings runs a 4.7. He's not fast, right? The Niners have always had like 1-4-3 guy that was kind of not that great at football, but was fast. You know what I mean? Like he's good, but not a legitimate starting caliber player. And they've got another one in Danny Gray. We'll see if he develops, and we'll see what that looks like. But, really raw as a route runner, but clearly has that speed and can blow the top off the defense if he develops more of his game. And George Kittle's not an above the rim player. He's kind of an oddball of a tight end. He's like the Debo of tight ends, essentially, physical, good after the catch, but not, go up and get the ball down the field over the top type of a guy. Although we've seen him make some plays like that. He is 6'4" and athletic, so he can go up and get a ball. And so the 49ers have really never tried to bring in those types of players, and that would really help Jimmy be a better deep ball thrower if he had better deep ball receivers. And a lot of that is just tracking the ball and having good ball skills. Tyreek Hill's a perfect example. He's super fast, yeah, but a lot of these plays are still contested, and he's so good at going up and pulling the ball down, even though he's only 5'10".
That's incredible. Yeah, it's true. You have to be the type of player that's willing to put your body up there, because you're going to take a shot. You're going to get smacked. So some guys just aren't willing to put their body out there, and maybe they're, like you said, they're just physically, or just the way that they're wired, they're just not that type of player.
Right. And so many guys I always, ball tracking is really important. Ball skills and ball tracking are so important for getting the ball down the field. That's why I love DK Metcalf coming out of the draft so much, because he's 6'4", 230 and ran a 4.3. Like, he's a freak of nature. Everyone sees that. And maybe he's a little tight in some areas, but dude could break off a slant and body up in front of you and catch the ball, had legitimately natural hands, and was really good tracking the ball down the field. So it was going to play at the next level. You see a lot of really small, fast guys that come out of college, and it looks amazing. They look like a human joystick in college because they're just faster and everybody can run around them. And they don't end up being good. But then you see a guy like Deshaun Jackson. He's 5'9" and can fly. Why is he so good? Because he can track the ball like nobody's business. He's a true center fielder out there. Doesn't slow down when he turns his head and can go get it and get to that spot where the ball's thrown. So there's an innate ability for receivers and downfield receivers, and Kyle Shanahan, I just don't think really wants that, and has tried to truly find players who are good at doing that. And you can do it in different ways. You can do it with size and range. You can do it with just ball skills, ball tracking. But even in Brandon Ayuk, who again is the most receiver the 49ers have, that is not really his strength either.
Real quick, and then I'll let you get out of here. Then I put this as a topic. I just says next handful of games will define this team as far as like where they're going to go. I don't know what the magic number is of what they got to win to be a playoff team. Somebody said 3 the other day. I'm like, where the hell did they pull that from? So I didn't believe it. But you have the Dolphins, then we have the Bucks. I think the Bucks are really gettable, but I think a lot of people still are going to overstate or over hype how good we could be against an aging Tom Brady, and to me still Tom Brady until he's not playing in the NFL anymore,
right?
And then of course you have Seattle, and I think the Commanders. They're all pretty decent teams here. I don't think they're as big of a walk out in the park as a lot of people think. Do you have kind of like a mindset of like maybe what the Niners record is, maybe like a 3-1, 2-2? What would work for you as far as because some of them are not in conference. Raiders in the AFC, Chiefs, or
I've talked about that because the Dolphins and the Raiders are the least important for the standings and playoff seeding because they're AFC teams.
Right.
But, it's a big barometer game this week. It's a popcorn game this week. But if the 49ers lose to the Dolphins, it's probably the one game you would want to lose the most, just looking down the stretch at games, because I think still most people probably are 49ers fans, have friends that are Raiders fans, would still rather beat a bad Raiders team than a bad Raiders team beat the 49ers late in the season. So even then, I think the Raiders game is probably more important for a lot of bragging rights than the Dolphins. I don't think the 49ers players feel that way. I'm just talking about the fans. I'm sure the 49ers players definitely are going to be up for this game and don't want to lose to a lot of the familiar folks on the other sideline. But the NFC games are all more important. And of course, that Thursday game against the Seahawks, that's a tough game. Those are the scheduled losses on most schedules when you have an away Thursday game. So they've got a short week. They're going to travel to Seattle, which is a tough place to play. and this is, for first place in the West potentially. So that's a really important game, and that's probably the toughest game on the schedule, just because short week away teams really struggle on the road on those Thursday night games. And in Seattle has always been a difficult place for the 49ers to play. So that is the most important game on the schedule. If you told me, I have no idea what's going to happen with the rest of the year, but they win at Seattle on Thursday Night Football, yeah, you win the West and you're in the playoffs and you're golden.
And we know with this Niners team, the number one seed necessarily doesn't mean anything, because they were the road warriors last year, and they were 2 minutes away, a couple minutes away. I mean, if Jimmy was healthy in that game and he could have made a couple more throws to Ayuk, who was running wide open in that game, Niners could have been in the Super Bowl. So would I love for us to be a number one seed and have home field advantage? Absolutely. Who wouldn't? Get healthy. But at the same time, just the way the Niners are built schematically, coaching, they're made for a tournament style, bludgeon you to death, run your ass over. And we'll see, man. And we still got some season left. To me, everything comes down to health. This 49ers team, everything's dictated on health. I am worried with some of these guys on this team that if the one thing that could derail the 49ers from now until if they make the playoffs is just going to be injuries. I think skill-wise, player-wise, coaching-wise, I think they have everything it takes to possibly get a ring this year, but I think health is going to be the number one factor. And so hopefully that isn't the case. And me and you can talk on Twitter or on here in February, March, talking about how the Niners just won a ring or whatever. So
top to bottom, this is a better team they had in 2019. It's a better team than they had last year.
Definitely.
So they can go just as far, if not further, but you need some luck and you got to win some big games in the playoffs. And so when you get to the tournament, you throw everything out the window. It'd be nice to have a couple of home games there. And I think the 49ers should be able to do that with the way things look the rest of the way.
We will see. I just want to say thank you for coming on. I know you're about to go follow some Thursday Night Football, and you got some food in the crock pot, so I'm going to let you go.
Crock pot going. Go talk to the other crock pot, Eric Crocker, get another podcast out. It'll go live after Thursday Night Football, and then watch a little Bills Patriots too. So it's going to be a nice little evening. And it's nice doing what I do because I can commandeer the TV from the wife and be like, hey, sorry, honey, this is work.
This is my job. Isn't that great? That's awesome.
Yeah. Not only 9 hours on Sunday, but 3 more hours on Thursdays and Monday nights too.
Best job ever. But just want to say thank you, everybody in the chat. I know I didn't get too involved in the chat tonight. Anytime I have Brian on, I really want to pick Brian's brain. I'll be back Friday with Raj from our SF Niners and the Dream guys. So till then, stay safe and healthy. Everybody have a great rest of your night. And hopefully the Niners come out for the victory this coming Sunday. See ya.